Welcome to Off the Post, powered by Lights On Electric and Cover All Exteriors. I'm Russ Cohen. We've got Anthony Mingione. Ant, how are you?
Doing all right, Russell. How are you on this fine Sunday morning?
Surprisingly warm. It's going to be like 77 degrees.
The window's open today. That's for sure.
I know, craziness. And we have, speaking of crazy, Michael Jello. Mike, how are you?
There was some feedback there. I had the show on in another window for a second. Oh, I'm doing fine, Russ. I'll be doing much better depending on the results of the baseball game tonight.
Baseball? Why do you care about baseball?
Oh, it's Schadenfreude, but
it's called hate watching, Russ. Hate watching.
Thank you.
Although I kind of hate watch my New York Jets, so I get it. All right, so let's talk about some storylines in the league. One is the LA Kings. It's kind of a weird thing what's going on there. They were down 3-0 yesterday, came back and tied it, lost an OT to Brandon Bussey. I don't know how all of a sudden he's gotten playing time for the Kings. I know Coach Check.
I know we can answer this question very easily. It's the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah, I know hurt, so maybe
it can be anybody.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a little puzzling because remember when the last waiver situation came up, there were goalies that everybody thought was going to get claimed, Michael DiPietro and a couple others, and Brandon Bussey was claimed. And then Caden Primo was put on waivers, and Caden Primo got claimed by Buffalo. And it's like, okay, what happened to the goalies that everybody thought were going to get claimed?
Right, I know. It's just a weird thing. But the notable thing is Darcy Kemper got scratched.
Yeah, he's week to week with a.
He's hurt. Yeah, he's weak. He's hurt, Russ.
But
Kopitar's hurt.
Is the realization there that Darcy Kemper is as bad as
that's what I wonder, because I've always had that realization, and I kind of think
Kemper is just you either get really good and get pleasantly surprised, or we get the regression to the point where he's an absolute liability. There just never seems to be with Kemper in the last few years anywhere in between with him.
Yeah, they're saying Kemper has an LBI, and that's why they claim Copley. But Anton Forsberg was their goalie, and
season over.
To kind of hold down the fort.
Yeah, and then you go out, and Ken Holland has possibly the worst free agent summer of any general manager out there, signing. I have no problem signing Corey Perry, because Corey Perry is, he'll as a third, fourth liner, veteran guy, whatever. But he's hurt, so they don't even get the. But the signings, Cody Ceci, and I mean, it baffles the mind how dumb the signings. Re-sign Andrei Kuzmenko.
I think on this show we have felt like Ken Holland may be past it. And so far, we have not seen any reason to think otherwise.
No.
Yeah. But I also feel like as well the Kings are kind of in a spot here where I think they have maybe about a little over $1 million in cap space, and I know there's one of the things I think they're reticent to do is like go too crazy, because they got to figure out Audrey, got to figure out Kempa, his contract right now, and it just seems like everything. But it also goes back to when Blake was the general manager. Some of the trades that just have come back to just absolutely eat away at the depth that they had in the organization. We go back to obviously the Dubois trade was an absolute abject disaster, and pretty much vaulted Winnipeg. That trade literally vaulted Winnipeg into top level status.
And I know that Kevin Fiala is a good forward, but you gave up Brock Faber, and I think Brock Faber on that blue line would look pretty good right now. I mean, especially with Drew Doughty.
Yeah, I'd say
a little long in the tooth, and they seem to not be a big fan of Brandt Clark, which I don't get.
Again, Brandt Clark's game is not predicated on defense. It's predicated on offense and puck possession and scoring and skating. And on a side note, and we'll talk about the Flyers later, we saw Brock Faber skating last night. His skating's elite. So, the Kings could use that. But
I mean, the issue here is, I mean, I'm being facetious here, but it's almost like Ken Holland is still working for the Edmonton Oilers the way he piloted this song. Dumoulin and CC. I mean, it accentuated the same positives that team is. They're very good defensively. They're very structured under Jim Hiller, but I'm not a big believer in their goaltending. And Kemper had a great regular season, but did not play well in the playoffs, and they can't score enough.
I understand them giving Kemper a little bit of leeway because, again, he did give them a good. And again, you also got, as a general manager, take a look at the whole picture as well. You also take a look at how the team played in front of him as well. I expected much better out of the Kings in the playoffs last year than what we got.
Oh, we all did.
And that was probably the big. But again, we always talk about how if your goaltender loses confidence, it takes the air out of the whole balloon. And I think that was a big part of it. So now LA's got to kind of reevaluate things, and their goaltending situation is what it is. It's not great, and they look like a team that's very much, lacking confidence. I mean, again, I'm going to give them all the credit in the world for rallying down 3-0 against Carolina last night, but it's just you're constantly, playing behind the proverbial 8 ball almost all the time, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Let's talk about the Islanders for a minute, specifically Matthew Schaefer, who's started off great. He's a point a game. We're seeing all kinds of good fancy stats, but he's also a point a game. Yeah. So, he's going to be in the Calder race for sure. But it's interesting because I feel like the Islanders now have done more to solidify their blue line, and yet they're still 2-3. Like, they're a puzzle team.
Because as good as Matthew Schaefer is, and I'm watching a guy who's honestly, I skating.
Yeah,
He's in that class. He's in that area, and that's huge. But it's an area for the Islanders that already they had a pretty good, solid blue line, and obviously you want to add a number one.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily address the rest of the Islanders. As Mike will tell you, ad infinitum over and over again. Where's the score?
Jesus Christ! I'll give Matthew Darsh a little more rope than sweet Lou Lamoriello, but Jesus Christ, okay, what did they do? I'm looking at their roster right now. They signed Jonathan Drouin. Okay, that's a nice depth signing. They brought in Maxime Shabana. Okay, decent depth. There's not a top line scorer, and it didn't move the ball.
I mean, Bo Horvat's more in the point right now. Barzal's not doing it at the moment.
Right, and Barzal's coming off a major injury. So again, but the whole point was to add to that group, to make them more dynamic offensively, and they're not. And in that division, if you cannot score more, then they start looking into the playoffs.
Agreed. So again, for the Islanders at the very least right now, I mean, they have won 2 in a row, so that we're going to see here whether or not they can kind of get this. They obviously was a pretty slow to be in the mix, but I think now at a certain point, Darsh, just like Lou should have, but I have maybe, I don't want to say misplaced confidence, but I have hope in this case that Darsh recognizes that the needs of his team here, and if they get themselves out of this hole and get themselves into a postseason, into the postseason picture, that he can address them, because I think he's got some assets that could be moved that could get.
Yeah, I think there's that. I think there's truth to that. We saw Mitch Marner score 2 goals. I'm curious, Mike's thoughts on that.
Oh, I made it apparent in the chat because somebody brought it up, and I said, yeah, enjoy him for the first 82 because after that he's going to be a big 0. Now, maybe that will change because
now, he gets 50 goals this season. Mike's
no. But Anthony, honestly, he could score 100. But the comments that came out of Mitch Marner, I think it was earlier in the week, where he talked about the fact that there was little or no media in Vegas. Like, it's a cleansing breath. I'm not basing.
I'm sure the Vegas media was thrilled to hear that.
It's not the media. Okay, it's not the media. In Toronto, Toronto has a very professional and very produce. They're going to roast you, and you didn't produce. You didn't produce when it counted. So, Mitchie, enjoy Vegas. Go to the slot machines. Have some free liquor in the casino, because when playoff time comes and you don't show up, those fans will go after you too.
You only get free liquor in casino, Mike, when you're at a slot machine and you stay there for a while. You don't just get it when you walk in. I just want to point that out.
Spot there.
Now, obviously, speaking of Vegas, I think we should probably stay on that topic right now, because we know what else that Vegas was in the news for this week.
Yeah.
So, again, we're going to be seeing it be debuting at some point here for the Vegas Golden Knights. So let's look at it from let's maybe attack this from a couple angles. One is, let's start off first with what the reaction was to it, and then secondly, what kind of impact do you think Hart can have for the Golden Knights?
I'll talk about the impact on Atlantic. Not the Atlantic.
Atlantic.
Athletic. Thank you. There is a place called the Atlantic. But no, the Athletic lost their credential for writing about it weeks before it happened. And that's
it was Mark Lazarus.
Mark Lazarus. Yeah.
Chicago. Did a column asking them, because the rumors had already been out there about Hart, and right. Okay, if you're going to be about that touchy about this subject, then you know that you're media,
right,
and that should tell you something.
So there's that, and then I'm not sure what Hart said as far as like on his first presser was great messaging. I'm not going to repeat it, but I'm just saying.
Community involvement when he was in Philly was some of it.
He needs to keep a low profile. He does not need to try and do that, because I think it backfired, and I saw the reaction.
Then if he doesn't, he's kind of caught in between.
All he can say is, "Hey, I'm going to be a good team member," and that's it. Walk away. That's it. He doesn't have to say anything else.
Probably this is the first time in how long you probably had to kind of, to speak, and I'm sure his own agent probably at this point probably said, yeah, at least with this first one. Now, I guarantee it, there's further questions about it. That's going to get, going to get zipped pretty quickly.
The NHL was in an awkward place here because they were found not guilty. You can't, they had been suspended for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And there's no basis to suspend them any further just because you think that they did.
You can't prevent someone from having, but you can. Court of public opinion will do what it will do. But at the end of the day, the team is going to do what they do. And I know, there was, in terms of the reaction to it, I know Sinbin Vegas had done a thing about the concerns about airing their concerns about the Golden Knights, signing Hart.
But I mean, if you want to see how the reaction in other places affected certain things, in Carolina they were considering signing Michael McLeod apparently, and the response was so vociferous that they backed off on that. Now Michael McLeod is playing 3 years in Avangard Omsk. Right. So I mean, I don't know whether the other three get signed. I mean, I know Formanton apparently his rights are still owned by Ottawa because he was
okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. At this point now, you almost would think Ottawa would, I mean, maybe they're waiting. Maybe they're waiting. It just seems like when we had these conversations about what might happen.
Yeah,
we all looked at this thing and said the one player that has a prayer of getting back into truly getting back into the National Hockey League, and teams being, it comes down to the whole, if the player performs, is the risk worth the backlash? And in this case for Vegas, in some ways it does make a little bit of sense that it ends up being Vegas, because they've been, quite frankly, for as much as I think some players love playing there, they've been mercenary and bluntness in their tactics and in in building the way they've built.
But you have to say that hockey and the NHL are different, because in baseball we've had Aroldis Chapman, who's a wife beater, get job after job after job. And now Ray Rice's career was ended because there was video of it. But there are instances of players in the NFL having multiple kids with different women and abuse and situation, and they are able to sort of continue their career. In hockey, it's different. It's a different thing. And I mean, okay, is Vegas the place for Carter Hart to go to sort of continue his career? Well, if you ask Mitch Marner, sure, because it's like
a low-key, not well-covered market. That's right. That's what the part of the reasoning is here. And
there's success there, but he is going to have to face it every time he goes into a Canadian market. And when opposing reporters will ask him those questions, and he's going to have to deal with it, just like Ivan Provorov had to deal with questions. After what happened in Philadelphia, he had to answer questions if he was made available to the media too. You have to come to grips with that, and if you don't know what's
going to happen. Again, Hart makes his return December 1st, and about 10 days later, the Vegas Golden Knights visit Philadelphia.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen.
There's going to be that game is going to have highly magnified, depending on. But again, it's only 10 games.
He might not be on the road trip. It wouldn't shock me if
he might not be. He might. That's going to be one of the biggest things where I won't be surprised if it is. But he's already ready to play by December 1st.
Now backing up for the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah,
it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Aiden Hill is the one starting in net, and then Vegas is going to hear about it that way. But it'll be Vegas's way of diffusing that situation, because if Hart is there, we all saw it last night. Actually, Russ, you saw the fan that was in the stands. I think it was in a black jersey, I believe, and the minute he turned around and it said Hart 79 on it, the boos were deafening. If Vegas is watching, that's probably going to be a game where it wouldn't surprise me unless Hart is on a really, really, really good, strong start, and they're winning and they're in the midst of a streak and they're like, we can't take him out, and we'll just look at this as he's got to deal with it and get through it, then maybe that's what happens. But if he's sort of dipping, sort of like his foot's like like dipping his foot in the water, so to speak,
I don't
trying to get start there, looking okay but not great, I almost can guarantee you Aiden Hill will probably be starting that game.
I think Hill will start, and I don't think he'll be on that trip. That's just my guess.
It depends on whatever their goaltending situation and where Hart is. If he can play and he's built up enough, Vegas may have to at that point in order to especially justifying the contract as well. I mean, granted, it's not a huge one at 1.8, but
we'll see. We'll see what happens with it all. See. Talking about the NHL being in a weird place, they talked about the Milan hockey rink, which I've been on for a long time.
Yes, you are, Russ. Yes, you are.
Because I just kept wondering, I want to see what this thing looks like, and I would go online and try and get pictures, and the same pictures have been up for 6 months. Literally. And so now the last time we talked about it, we kind of knew it was going to get done last minute, and it is probably going to get done last minute. It's so bizarre.
Don't you remember? I mean, don't you remember? We didn't go. Next time we have Greg Wyshynski on the show, we can ask him about the accommodations in Sochi, where they had a toilet in the middle of the room with no plumbing. I mean, everything seems to be done at the last minute. But this is okay. You can't go in and have a situation where you're going to have a practice situation with I guess we're going to have some sort of mini tournament in January, a few weeks before the tournament. What if this ice is not work?
They're going to let the women try it out first, Mike.
Right.
The women's Olympic team, which is not right either, by the way. But that's what they're going to do.
What's the fallback if the ice plant or the piping or whatever, and it's not, what is the fallback? And I've been saying, well, are they going to go to Turin? I mean, it's too late.
They'll play on the smaller smaller rink. I don't know what the smaller rink means.
I mean, because the fact of the matter that the NHL is now committed to this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're going to have to look at it, and if when the commissioner makes a point of the concerns there, it's you all need to get your ass in gear. I guess what would be the worst? I mean, the worst case scenario is the league is committed to it, but could the league basically look at facilities and say, we don't trust, and we're not
Yeah,
going
they
to
can move
players.
it to like Western Canada. They could say, listen, this is not going to play.
I don't think that's going to fly to do it there, but
I know,
do
but
they
I'm
have
just saying.
established ice rinks elsewhere
That's why
outside of Milan?
That's why I said Turin, because
Yeah, but we don't even know like what the condition of that rink
no,
is.
we don't. But see, the thing here, Anthony, is that apparently they're in lockstep with the PA as well on this, and the PA are they were the ones who wanted to go to the Olympics, but they're in lockstep because if God forbid, Jack Eichel or Connor McDavid steps on that ice and blows out a knee because the ice is terrible, they have to protect their players.
Yeah.
I
do wonder whether or not the league sends over a team of people to kind of advise. I mean, I'm sure they probably have done it already, but I kind of wonder if the groups that end up doing, let's say, like the Winter Classic or the Stadium Series, and I know it's a special environment because it's outside, but just so they could figure out the proper mix and
set it up inside the Roman Coliseum. Have the
seating might be a bit of a concern for that game.
I mean, the NHL does say they can. The NHL does swear they can put ice anywhere.
That's true.
Okay, so they're talking about the Rio Fiera hockey venue is where they'll play, and that one
2,500 people. It's like because remember they remember Russ,
a temporary setup. Like, so I don't even know.
It's going to be like the Italian Mullet Arena. That's what it's going to be like.
That's what it really sounds like.
Yeah,
because it sounds like a similar setup. They're going to be playing like games of, like, say, Czechia, Switzerland. They're going to be playing these in a smaller rink, like when we were at the World Junior here, Russ, where the Harbor Center had some games, and they played the bigger games at the stadium or in the arena. I mean, but the problem is, if the big arena is not workable, then all the games are going to be a cluster bleep. It is going to be terrible.
This thing says that it's basically going to be set up inside like a giant convention center. This other game, at this other place.
Played in Hartford then.
But remember, here's the thing: people have paid big money for these tickets.
Yes.
That's the other part of this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing that they have to kind of take into the mix there. But to respond to the commenter as well, the Italy's not going to go for that. Having the games having games in Switzerland.
Well, it may end up being somewhere else. Again, I'm trying to find a picture of this other rink, and it's just an outdoor shot. Like, it's not even. So it's like this is like a model home. And you're trying to move in. Like, it's just.
Yeah, you have no idea what you're getting into. It feels like, what is it, the Money Pit?
Yeah. Money Pit. It does seem very similar to that. All right. Yeah. So let's get to team reports. And the Flyers were fortunate to win an overtime game for many reasons. Owen Tippett looks good. There are some things that look good. And then there's the other story that's still bubbling under the surface is Matvei Michkov's lack of playing time.
Yes, Michkov's lack of playing time for sure. But again, if you're watching Michkov closely, honestly, and I have been, it's not a surprise to see him when they get into when the benches have gotten shortened. And again, if there's a time for Tocchet and the Flyers to do this with him, it's probably right now. Because again, you still have sort of the cloak or the cover of him getting himself back.
New coach, new system,
everything else that's involved, and coming off whatever his ankle injury. It's one of those things, though. Once we get past 10 games, Russ, this story will start to ferment at a much higher rate, depending on what the Flyers' record is. Now, if the Flyers are over 500 at the end of it, at the first 10 games, it'll still be a story for sure. But if they're floundering and they're still in that spot, then, they're going to, Tocchet can only go to the defense of, I needed my best 9 guy, the best, shortening the bench.
Okay.
And the signal of the Michkov is, in this game, you have not been one of the best guys. And again, we've seen already his spot get taken late in the game by Nikita Grabenkin. And now his minutes got taken by Owen Tippett. Now again, Tippett earned that extra time for sure in this game. So from a purely circumstantial moment-by-moment situation, it makes sense. But if it becomes part of a continued repeated pattern as we move forward, that's when people start to ask questions of what's going on really now.
All right. And so my retort would be, let's say I agree with it for that game only. And I say, okay, I was still surprised they weren't even going to use him in overtime. Like, why would you not?
But that's been Tackett's MO. If he does not, if that bench is short, like watch the way things are set up.
No, I see it.
Yeah, you see it.
I don't agree with it.
You may not agree with it, but they're going to look at, if he's looking at getting a full team buy-in here, and he feels that the best 9 players out there, and it's tough because that Cates line, I think, really kind of throws things a little bit in those circumstances because they played so well. Yeah. It's the most consistent line in all aspects of the ice here in the early season. But they're going to need more from other places, and they're going to need more from Michkov in this circumstance. Which is why, again, Russ, I'm going back to, I'm not jumping off the deep end of the pool here, jumping into the deep end of the pool on this until we get another 3, 4, 5 games in it. And if it continues, at that point, you're now into the season here. He's one of your best offensive talents. He should be out there.
He's not buying in, by the way. I think he's confused by it. I think he is trying to play his game. We did note that he's looking for guys to pass to at times.
But I do wonder as well if the thing that bugs if there is something that bugs him is that he does have that scorer's predilection of cherry picking high in the neutral zone. Sure. And it could be a case here where Tackett's looking at it and saying, you're too far up for us to begin building the attack, building a proper transition attack. And that causes, that's something that may cause some issue there, that you could cheat into the zone somewhat, but you know, and this is where I kind of go back to, I do wonder in many ways if for all of his hard line tactics, whether John Tortorella was actually softer on that Michkov.
It does look that way.
It looks that way, and that's the conversation I had in the elevator. Like I'm choking walking down the aisle. I said, Michkov's probably pining for Torts at this point.
Because Tackett's got a new deal and a lot of term, and he can do this.
Yeah,
I just look at the Flyers right now, and I see, and it's like just a repeat of what Tortorella did. Sean Couturier averaging 19 minutes and 34 seconds. How much longer before he breaks down? It's like, I'm sorry, you cannot play this guy as good as he is, and as you know, he's a great face-off guy. 56.7 face-off percentage.
But Mike, let's get down to it here. That gets down to roster construction. That gets down to Trevor Zegras was, supposed to be experimented at second line center. He's already now in this hybrid role of playing offensively on the wing. Again, will we get back to center as the season goes on? I have no idea. Noah Cates is you're getting down to it's your top 2 centers are Noah Cates and Sean Couturier. You got to remember something as well. Hold on. And Dvorak too. Dvorak is playing key minutes here, no question. But again, it's still more in a checking line role in this circumstance where he gets some opportunities. But this is their situation at center to begin with. He's going to get those minutes. And number 2, physically, he doesn't have this. Obviously, he's never been a quick player, Sean Couturier. He's been solid enough speed-wise NHL that it's enough to pass by. What it comes down to with Couturier is that he physically, again, he's reporting that he physically feels in some ways better than he's had the last several, even before he had the surgery. So it may have taken a couple seasons in this case. And now it's kind of aligned. Maybe things are aligning properly with him. So I unlike last year with Torts running him into the ground, I think as the season goes on, we'll see some staggering going on a little bit here with Tackett. But he does have, again, unless Trevor Zegras gets a full ride here and playing the center position, and they obviously don't trust him up because he gets murdered on draws.
The experiment lasted 3 games. I mean, come on. It's like, okay, I'm sorry to tell you this, Philadelphia fans. I'm sorry to tell you this, Philadelphia organization. You're a rebuilding team. Stop acting like you're competing for the playoffs. You
Well,
should.
the other thing I will say.
So you're going to tell basically the fan again in this circumstance when they've acquired these players that they're not going to compete.
This is window dressing. Of course, you should be honest with them. Send a friggin' letter like the New York Rangers.
I mean, they kind of did that already. I mean, the expectations were not.
They did that 2 years ago. They're not going to go back on that. I would say this. There is another guy who is 11 for 13 on faceoffs, Rodrigo Abols, and he's not being utilized.
No, at the moment he's currently being, but it's kind of it is interesting though that the two games that Abel, that again they've been going back and forth between Luchenko. It's been kind of the rest of the lineup's been staying in place, but they've been rotating a veteran situation with Abols and Delorier in some games, and then Luchenko and Grabenkin in other games. At a certain point, they're going to have to get to the point where they're going to need to rotate, one in. Now, what I think is going to happen with Abols is Luchenko is eventually going to end up going to juniors, and he's going to have, not just a fourth line ride here, but I do think there's a chance he may play a little higher in the lineup, Russ. But again, how much is Abols part of your long-term future if you're Philadelphia?
I mean, he's part of the future right now.
As of right now, at age 29, he certainly is at the moment, and I think he might get some ride here. But I think until Luchenko,
they need to send Luchenko back so that could resolve this situation.
Exactly. It would in that circumstance. Then you were able to kind of mix and match lineup because you don't have one guy coming out of the lineup and one guy going into the lineup as these teams are. But it is not a coincidence. It really isn't that the two games that that Abols has been in. The two wins that the Flyers have had this season, Abols has been in the lineup for them and has played a solid enough role. I think it's nothing exemplary, but could he do more a little higher in the lineup? How high? I mean, I'm not putting him up into the top. I'm not putting him into the top six.
Sub him in for faceoffs. That's what you could do.
Yeah, that's the thing that they're going to be looking at here is that in that respect, you can maybe distribute if he can, win on draws.
On the power play, which is still putrid, the Flyers lost most of their faceoffs. Important faceoffs.
That's where they're getting hurt. And when they actually get the puck, the movement, and Russ, you'll say this yourself as well. The movement, there's no question. The movement is better.
It is.
The shot decisions are where they're shooting it, but the shot decisions in some ways, especially coming from the point,
that's a problem.
The big zero right now to me on the power play right now, even though he was responsible for the scoring play in overtime last night, and he did a great job skating out of the zone.
He did well.
But as a power play guy, is Jamie Drysdale. He's to me, he's been a non-entity. He skates around a lot. He moves around, but there's this constant motion, but I don't see I just don't see a player that carries himself with confidence.
All right, so we're gonna move off the Flyers. Yeah. Let's talk about the Leafs and Anthony Stolarz calling out the team. Like, does he have the cachet to do that?
I mean, he's well liked in the room. I don't know if he has the cachet with a ton of people because in 2 weeks he'll be injured, and he'll be working out on the side for 2 months. I mean, I'm being sarcastic here, but he's well liked in the room and fine. But at the same time, somebody needs to say it.
That's fair.
Well, I'm going to say this in terms of it's not a case with cachet in this circumstance. It is guys, this isn't good enough.
What about the captain?
Well, I mean, Matthews is. I mean, he's good with the media, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about in the locker room. I actually think probably, you've got Morgan Riley is more of a leader, I think, in terms of a vocal leader in that locker room, being there and being a reporter. I mean, he's always struck me as somebody who spoke up, and Tavares is sort of a quiet leader. And I think Matthews is amongst that group. I'm not casting aspersions on him, but Matthews is part of that group of let's make the best player the captain. That doesn't mean that the captain is the leader. He's just the best player. But I'll say this. I mean, they have a 5-game homestand. They're 2-1-1 on the 5-game homestand. 3 of the 4 games have been extremely close. They blew out Nashville, but they had a late 1-goal loss to Detroit on Monday. They had an overtime victory against the Rangers. They had an overtime loss against Seattle. What this shows you is that, the margin of victory from last year and the margin of victory this year is different. is like obviously the loss of Marner. They're not going to score, but the players who were scoring last year, Nyes is scoring, Tavares is still scoring at a very decent pace. Matthews has got, I think, 4 goals. They're getting some offense out of like their secondary players. Stolarz was great against the Rangers on Thursday, but I didn't think he was great last night. I didn't think he was particularly great against Detroit, even though he faced, I think, 15 shots on goal and he gave up, I think it was 3 goals. So, okay, you can talk up all you want, but perform too. And you have to, and they're missing Joseph Wall. Joseph Wall, I don't know what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on.
That's an extended absence for sure.
It's an extended, it's now almost a month. We don't know what's going on. It's probably, like I said, and I'm only guessing here, it's probably family health related. Yeah. And, they say he's, the last thing that was mentioned was that he's working back towards coming back, but they didn't put a timetable on it. So we don't know. The other thing right now that's, obviously everybody's focused on.
It's not a horrendous start. Like, we're not talking about the Leafs or last place.
No. They lost 2 games in a row to Detroit, and they've bounced back from that. But I'm just saying everything is close. Everything, they had opportunities in the third period and in overtime to win. And then, Josh Mahura hadn't scored a goal in almost 2 seasons, gets a break and scores. It just happens.
Yes.
The interesting thing is obviously the Easton Cowan thing. He made his debut earlier in the week. He had his first point against Nashville, but they scored 7 or 8 goals in that game. So, but he played well. But you can see, Russ, like in a 1-1 game against the Rangers in the third period, he sat the last 13 minutes. They don't, Berube doesn't completely trust him. They were subbing in Nyland or they were subbing in other players. Again, I think the kid is talented. I think he plays well with talent. He might just not be ready. And it's like, so
he might be in between.
Right. And a couple times he has gotten rocked. He got rocked by Ozzy Weisblatt against Nashville. He got rocked again yesterday. He has to sort of feel his way and maybe, get a little of a tougher skin, and that can happen in the American Hockey League. So I think when Scott Lawton comes back, which is probably in a week or so, he probably gets sent down.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about a place where there's a lot of hope after 1 game. The Buffalo Sabres.
Well, after 2 games, Ross.
What's the song? We found love in a hopeless place. Is that the name of the song?
But they played with passion. That's what I saw the quote.
Like I said, love in a hopeless place.
They play with passion. Yes. The Ottawa Senators are a train wreck right now.
Yeah, that's surprising me, but I guess it's all going bad for them.
Well, I mean, Brady Tkachuk out for probably close to 2 months.
That hurts them.
They played Miralainen instead of Ullmark. And Ullmark, when he's played, it hasn't been great. And Miralainen was a sieve.
I'm not sure if Miralainen can play. I mean,
he played at the end of last year, like Murray Pam said. He did play well at the end of last year, but
this is this year. Last year's last year.
Right,
this is
right.
This year.
No, I get it. He could be the Finnish Anton Forsberg this year. You don't know, but I mean the problem here is even with Ottawa in a sort of disarray. Ottawa scored 2 goals in the first 2 minutes of that game on Wednesday, and it was 5-4. And Lindy took a timeout, and they regathered themselves, and they scored a goal 15, 16 seconds later, and then basically they were shot. Yesterday, again, now Florida is without Barkov, Tkachuk. Mikkola got hurt in the game yesterday. And Kulikov is out for 5 months. Yep. Bobrovsky played phenomenal. The Sabres, I give them a ton of credit. Their penalty killing was great. They dug themselves a hole in the first period, and they killed the penalties. And Josh Doan is playing really well right now. But
And some Marchand Dahlin entertainment.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Of course, I understand the pure Buffalo perspective. If you watch the replay, Dahlin cross-checks Marchand.
No, I know. I saw that.
And so do you not expect Marchand to go back at him? Of course he's going to.
No,
and of course, the guy who gets the retaliatory thing gets the penalty. So that's, like it was some great plan. No, it was, I mean, Dahlin, as great of a player as he is, he's physical and he's cheap sometimes, and he gets away with it because he's a star. And then I think that's a good thing to have that sort of edge in your play. But I think the concern right now is off the ice, because, and I wrote about this for the Hockey News yesterday. David Pagnotta of the fourth period comes out and says that Alex Tuch has paused contract negotiations based on the start of the season. Okay, so you've got that going on. You've got a goaltending glut. They've sent Georgiev down to Rochester, and now he's splitting time with Devin Levi, and Luukkonen's going to probably go down there for some rehab starts. So they have 4 goalies in Rochester. They have Colton Ellis, who they picked up off of waivers, who they can't put back on waivers because he get claimed. But I'll just say, say this. Okay, they won 2 games and the pressure is alleviated, but the Tuch situation, if it maintains that way, if there's an uncertainty, that's a thing that, okay, you come down to the deadline. If you're not in the playoff race, you got to trade him because he's going to walk away for nothing.
This is like a revolving door. If they can't hold, it's like they can't replenish their team quick enough for the guys that want to leave, because it's not like, you get these guys in the draft and every year you get to add to your roster. It doesn't work that way.
And like Elliot Friedman said that Dahlin and Thompson had basically given the Sabres, like, we want to be competitive this year. If we're not competitive, we want out. Well, that's great, but you're under contract. And it's like, somebody's got to be here. The organization has always said, if the player doesn't want to be here, then we'll accommodate them. At a certain point, you can't, because you have to have bodies. And it's like, but so, maybe something has to be done in terms of the organization being better run. And, we know that if they have a losing streak, Kevin Adams is toast. If they're
toast anyhow, like I just don't imagine.
It depends on what degree that you put him in the toaster for.
Right.
We're on a 5, 6, or 7 setting here.
They're competitive for a playoff spot, he's not getting fired. But if they drop 8 to 10 points out of a playoff spot, then out of the last wild card, then he's toast. I'm saying if they're competitive, he doesn't get fired. They don't want to fire him. They don't. But they may force to, because after 2 games, people are booing him and chanting "Fire Adams." I'm waiting for the palm trees to come back.
I knew it. I was waiting for it. I was waiting for the.
They don't show him. What you're saying is, Mike, at games they don't show pictures of him in the press box like other teams do of their GM.
Well, Russ, that was the other thing. They did the introductions at the beginning of the year. Last year he was introduced and they booed him. This year they didn't introduce him.
But you can't boo someone you don't introduce.
Right.
I guess.
That's it. That's it for Off the Post.
Hold on, one more thing, Russ.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I wanted to take a second here. Yeah, I wanted to take a second here to give a shout out to Haley Taylor Simon, our colleague at Hockey Hot Stove. Haley has been out for a little bit here. We're hoping to see her back with us and everything in the next within the next week or so. Hopefully, again, she's taken some time. Bill as well, Meltzer, our colleague, also kind of acknowledged that as well. So just wanted to let her know that we are thinking of her and looking forward to seeing her soon. Yeah,
definitely. It's tough. I've been in contact with her. Yeah, and so we hope for the best, and she'll be back. We know. All right, that's it. That's it for Off the Post. We'll catch everybody next time.
Take care, everybody.